Hello and welcome to the Sound Up Seattle podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Seattle and Washington sports. I'm your host, Tyler Cartwright, joined as always by my co-host,
John Carey.
And we are here today to talk to you about what has been one of the most lackluster Seattle sports news weeks in quite a while. There's just not a lot going on. So we're going to do some checking in on college basketball, check in on a couple things that happened with regards to the Mariners, but nothing really is going on that team specifically. The Storm made a trade, so we'll talk about that, and then we'll probably hop off. It's going to be a little bit shorter of a pod, but anything to say, John, before we get started?
No, a lot of college basketball and not much else, so let's dive in.
Yes, here is some Coyote Picnic. All right, John. First thing that I want to talk about, let's get the Mariners discussion out of the way because, as everybody knows, the Mariners are the hot topic right now. Spring training has ramped up a little bit. They've got some games coming in the next couple weeks, and then the season starts at the end of March. So things are exciting. In the Mariners world, Justin Turner, the guy who everybody thought the Mariners were trying super hard to acquire, signs a deal with your Chicago Cubs for 1 year, $6 million. Looking at that number, what is your reaction to his signing, and why couldn't the Mariners have gone for that with, even though they had a limited budget, like that feels like not much for a guy like Justin Turner. We were expecting like $10 million.
Correct. Yeah, it's a bit of an underpay, but it doesn't shock me. And, as the guy that's always getting pissed at the Mariners for being cheap, I kind of get it. Turner is just like, he's so old. I think he'll be starting this season at 42 years old.
Yeah.
And, he was kind of erratic last season for the M's. His numbers still ended up solid. He's still remarkably close to batting 300 every year. But I think it's just a situation where it's like, okay, maybe he didn't really love the cold, which would be strange considering he was a Toronto guy. But for whatever reason, it didn't seem like it was the best fit for him here. And, do you really want to pay a guy $6 million for his age 42 season? I think they're just looking at other things. Good for the Cubs. Glad the Cubs were able to get him on a deal like that. 1 year, $6 million. It's not much to lose. But, to let a 42-year-old walk does not, break my brain.
Yeah, looking at this one, I'm thinking about this deal in regards to the Jorge Polanco deal. And I'm like, okay, we're paying Jorge Polanco $7.75 million. And Jorge's a guy who's 31, and with regards to like if we had signed Turner and Donovan Solano or Jorge Polanco and Donovan Solano, I think the Polanco fit is better, especially if Polanco is willing to play third base. Like Justin Turner, at, like you said, age 42 is not an everyday third baseman for this team, and I don't think anybody should have expected that from him. I think if we were going to sign him, it would have been in that Donovan Solano spot, and I think the Solano signing is, we talked about it when it happened, it's basically the same thing as Justin Turner, but he's on a cheaper deal. He's a little younger. He's in his mid to late 30s, if I remember right. But it gives the Mariners more flexibility that I think that they wanted to do coming forward into this season, because they can make more trades. They can take on a little bit of money. They can dump some salaries. They've just got more flexibility because they didn't sign Justin Turner and they went for a guy who basically does the same thing, but on a cheaper deal. So looking at it, if this was like their third signing, I think it would have made a little bit more sense in regards to the entire team. You could have put Solano at second, Polanco at third, and Turner at first, but I'm okay with where they're at with Dylan Moore. We've kind of, I hate to say it, we've come to terms with the fact that this is where they're at. So I think that we really like looking at this deal, and I don't think there's been a ton of discussion about it, but looking at this deal, I don't think that there's too much to worry about in terms of, we missed out on this $6 million Justin Turner deal. He's got, $2.5 million in bonuses that he can make. If he has a really good season, we'll kind of be hitting ourselves, but I don't think that is actually going to come. So I'm very okay with it.
Yeah. And, for what it's worth, I think I would prefer Turner 1 year, $6 million to Solano, 1 year for $4 million. But, it is what it is. And there's a chance that Turner really falls off the cliff this year just with age and whatnot. So, and there's also a chance he kind of wanted to go to Chicago,
Yeah.
Maybe there's a chance he's like, yeah, it's $8 million for Seattle or $6 million for Chicago. So When he's that age and has made as much as he had, maybe he just kind of wanted to be there. So, yeah, it's too bad to see him go on that kind of deal, but, no tears are being shed.
And you know what? We'll see him when the Mariners come to Chicago. We're going to that, so we'll definitely watch him play.
That's right. Yeah, we'll see him in Wrigley, baby.
That'll be good. Okay, let's hop off the Justin Turner discussion and talk a little bit more about the Mariners with regards to the Red Sox, because earlier this week, or maybe it was late last week, Rafael Devers, the Red Sox third baseman, said that he does not intend on leaving the third base position after the acquisition of Alex Bregman. It's an interesting point made by Devers. I think as a defensive player, he's not nearly as good as Bregman, but Bregman in recent days has stated that he's willing to move positions if needed. But I still think it leaves some question marks on this Red Sox team with regards to how are they going to fit together. Is Bregman going to move to short and is Trevor Story going to move to second? Is Bregman going to go to second? There's going to be some conceding in that scenario, and maybe that'll open up the spot for a guy like Tristan Casas to move to the M's. Maybe there's some more flexibility that the Mariners can get with regards to the Red Sox positional variation, and maybe some of their prospects and guys that are close. But it's an interesting point of discussion.
Yeah, a little surprised to see Devers make those comments. You don't see guys do that a lot. Typically, even if behind closed doors, they're like, no way. They'll come out and say, oh, yeah, if they need me to move to second, I'll move to second. But I can't imagine. Devers is, one of the biggest names on this Red Sox roster. When the Sox decided to bring in Bregman, I'm sure at the very least they knew where Devers' headspace was at. And they may have been like, well, go fuck yourself. We're going to move Bregman to second, or we're moving you to second and you can just deal with it. But I'm sure they have a plan for this. And, whatever Devers does or doesn't say doesn't really matter at the end of the day. I think most likely situation is just they move Bregman to second and just kind of shuffle people around. And that would open up, potential opportunity to snag one of those other position players. But, sorry, Rafael, but it's not really your choice.
Yeah, I think when that free agency signing was made, people were really excited because it might have insinuated, that's the word that I'm thinking of, insinuated that Bregman was moving to third, and then Devers could maybe go to DH or first base, and that might free up Casas in a more real way for the Mariners. But after those comments, it seems like it's more the Red Sox have their core group of guys, and that's going to stay as Casas, Devers, Bregman, Story, all those guys. And maybe the prospects can break camp after spring training or something, but it does indicate that the Mariners will not be able to pounce on and anything Red Sox related as much as we thought we would. So just something to note.
Maybe next time. It's also, decent chance that if they were making a move, people like to make them with the opposite conference, just so they don't see him as often. So sticking to the American League might be less opportunistic. Good news for my Cubs, though. Yep. A little cross-pollination.
All right. Anything else to say about the Mariners before we hop into a quick Storm discussion?
Can't believe we talked for 10 minutes on the Mariners.
Look at us. Sub 10 minutes. Sub 10 minutes on the Mariners.
Now let's move
All right. On. The Storm. I believe, this was last Friday. This was Valentine's Day. The Storm acquired Lexie Brown from the Los Angeles Sparks in exchange for 2 second-round draft picks, one in 2025 and one in 2027. The Storm also received the Sparks' 2025 third-round draft pick, so this upcoming year, which should be pretty good, or upcoming draft, should be pretty good. The Sparks were not great last year, so any draft picks that you can get from them soon, the sooner the better. So Lexie Brown as a player has moved around quite a bit. She's, I think, part of the 2018 draft class, so she's been around a little bit and dealt with some injuries for sure. She was... She had her best year in 2022 with the Sparks, but she bounced from Connecticut to Minnesota to Chicago to LA. She's been all over the place. And yeah, she's kind of she either plays the entire season or she deals with injury and plays half the season. And there's really no in between for her. So we're hoping that we can
game style.
Exactly. We're hoping that we can get full season from her, especially after our discussion from last week about the Jordan Horston injury. So that's probably where the Storm saw this move coming from in terms of their perspective. But give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I think, we were both in agreement that there's a good chance the Storm draft a guard in this upcoming draft, but that would still leave them at least one guard short with the Horston injury, so not surprising to see them go snag a veteran guard. Lexie's a talented player, has averaged anywhere from like 2 to 12 points per game over the last, 5 or 6 years of her career, so her offensive game is a little sporadic, depending on opportunity and situation and injury status, to your point. But the fact of the matter is they needed a third guard. So to bring in a vet like Lexie, she'll fit in. She can play next to Skylar. She can play next to whoever they draft. Yeah, I'm not, once again, I'm looking for a kind of a bridge year, kind of a gap year between what was last year pseudo contender and what will hopefully be a contender with this very talented player they secure in the draft. But yeah, you need talented players to build those bridges, and that's what Lexie seems to me.
Yeah, I think coming into the season, don't expect too much from her. I think she'll be our bench guard. I don't think she'll be the secondary guard in the starting lineup by any means. I would expect that to be whatever rookie we get with that number 2 pick. So, and if it is Kiki, then we'll probably just run a 4 big lineup and have Skylar Diggins-Smith be the only guard that we run with and just dominate people on the inside. So it's going to be quite the interesting year for the Storm. I think we will see how they decide to run it as the season starts, which I believe it's coming up soon. It's like this month or something, right?
No. First game I believe is May.
Is it May? Oh no, it's the Sounders. The Sounders are this month. They've like started playing exhibition games. That's what it is.
Yeah, WNBA is a while away. We still have, college women's finishing up, and then the draft, and then pro will start.
God, you're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm excited for this Storm season.
It was confusing because I was trying to think to myself, it's like, oh, how are they going to have time to draft before this season starts? And it's like, oh yeah, women's college basketball starts a little earlier, and then it'll wrap up here, and then we'll have time for the draft before the actual season starts. But yeah, it's WNBA, it's a shorter season, certainly, particularly compared to like the NBA. It's May to October, I think. So a relatively short sports season with a pretty big off season.
Yeah. All right. I think that is it with regards to the Storm and the Mariners in terms of news. So you want to just do some analysis? Are we ready to talk some college basketball?
Let's do it. Who do you want to start with?
I would like to start with the Washington State Cougars. I think it's time we talk about them and their downfall because I finally get to, talk about how bad the Cougars are. Might be the first time this year that we've gotten to talk about them. So,
yeah, we've taken a break from them. Last we talked about, they'd started WCC play and were looking good. They'd won starting WCC play. They were 5-2 in their first 7 WCC games. And we said, okay, this team came to play. They gave Gonzaga a good first half. They're 5-2 in their first 7. It was validating for WSU and, to a certain degree, disvalidating for the WCC, kind of backing up what everyone's been saying about, just a weaker conference. Since then, they have lost 6 of their last 7 WCC games, with their only win being an 87-86 win over Pepperdine. So it could be 0 of their last 7 if one basket goes in at the end of that game. It's been a tough stretch, and, we're going to talk about the Wazoo side of it, but, hats off to the WCC for stepping up and showing that, there's no difference between their middle class and the middle class of the Pac-12, the former Pac-12. I
was going to say, Wazoo was the lowest class of the Pac-12, but
okay, all right, that's fair.
But they've been laying the smackdown on Wazoo a little bit. San Francisco, I think San Francisco is kind of the tertiary team when it comes to the WCC. It's like Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and then it's San Francisco. And they laid the smackdown, beat them 75-51. And then their other game that they played against San Francisco was actually kind of a nail biter. Came down to 91-82, and the Cougars won that one. But they're square in that like 3 to 8 range of the WCC, where they could fall in anywhere in any part of that division or conference and then beat any of those teams. They're not. I don't think there's any chance that they beat Gonzaga. They've already lost both of their games to St. Mary's. So it's one of those things that like they're kind of where you expected them to be, kind of in that second tier of WCC teams. And maybe San Francisco is a step above them. I haven't actually looked at their conference play.
They certainly are. Yeah. San Fran's a better team.
Yeah. And by all accounts, that kind of makes sense. Over the last few years, geez, we got a new cat and it is running all over the place. It's never been around during a podcast. It doesn't know what to do with itself. But yeah, it's been something where you looked at Wazoo coming in out of the Pac-12 last year and you were like, okay, maybe the Pac-12 was way better than we thought. And I just don't think it was. Like the bottom of the barrel is kind of middle tier of the WCC. I think even Washington would be a little bit above. Washington wasn't very good, but maybe a little bit above Wazoo. But really, it is consistently like Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and you could have put them in any sort of conference and they would have performed. And everything else is kind of the dregs of any other conference.
Sure. And, it's worth noting, San Fran's a good program. San Fran can play with anybody. You know, they're not going to beat anybody, but they're a good program. I think what was surprising is I think we were expecting to see Wazoo and Oregon State slot in right there at the 4-5 behind those three teams. And, seeing Santa Clara and Loyola both, continue to build their programs. Oregon State is sitting at 4, but narrowly... Actually, sorry, they're sitting at 5 between Santa Clara and Loyola, with Washington State sitting at 7. So just kind of surprising to see a couple California schools hanging tough in the WCC. But it is what it is, and good for the conference, and a little bit humbling, I think, for the Beavers and Washington State. But speaking of the Cougars, it's been a tough stretch. They lost their rivalry game against Oregon State as well. But it's been just very erratic play. They've scored anywhere from 50 to 80 points over the last couple of weeks. They can't seem to consistently get offense going. When they do, it's typically coming from LaJuan Watts, and Isaiah Watts, two brothers tearing it up. But when that's not happening, their defense is not there night to night, and their offense is just a little too sporadic. So that's how you get 1-6 in the WCC.
Yeah. It's tough that they beat Washington early this year. Otherwise, I would talk more trash to them. But I'm not going to say anything too mean because they did get their one win over UW. So we can move into the UW discussion, I guess, from there.
It's been good days for UW.
Good days for UW so far. So tonight, by the way, Gonzaga plays Washington State tonight. That's going to be a fun game to watch for Gonzaga, hopefully, and make it easy. It should be an easy win, we hope, for Gonzaga, because they need to keep building their case.
They need it. They need the momentum, something fierce, and we'll get there. But moving to UW, it's been a pretty good stretch. Last we talked, they were dead last in the Big Ten.
Worried they wouldn't get a win. We were worried they wouldn't get a win.
Correct. And things have turned around. They're now sitting at third to last, which is what are there, 18 teams? So that puts them at 16th in the Big Ten. But, with room to grow, they could easily find themselves at 14th or 13th before the season ends, which sounds like we're mocking, but honestly, it's a lot better than we were expecting.
Yeah, I think in the recent stretch, since the return of Frank Kepnang, which I think I talked about probably a month ago. He was kind of coming back at the end of January, early February. Since his return, the Huskies are 3-2. Granted, they beat Minnesota, Northwestern, and Penn State, which are all three not the best teams. But at the same time, if they're able to beat the teams that are worse than them, that's at the very minimum what you're looking for. They got a nice upset win against Maryland early on. And, they're really just trying to build a baseline and say, okay, if we can be better than the bottom of the Big Ten, currently it's Washington right now, but it's like Northwestern, Penn State, Rutgers. If you can be better than Minnesota and Iowa, you can slowly creep up and build a foundation for your roster such that you're never going to be that low, or you're never going to end up that low in the next half decade or whatever it is. But if you can build a foundation there, that is what we're really looking for. And they've got a game tonight against Rutgers that's going to be really nice to see. And I think it's going to be really indicative of how they're going to go. Is it going to be a much more up and down season, or are they going to have the baseline that we really wanted them to have at the start of the year? And I've been pleased with what's happened recently. DJ Davis has kind of turned it on. Makai Mason has had a couple really good games, and they've really just early in the season, it was great. Osabor had, averaged more than 10 points a game. It was Tyler Harris averaging more than 10 points a game, and really just whoever could find a shot. And they've really settled down. Zoom Diallo has been a really nice 4-star freshman coming in, averaging 11 points on the season. And then, DJ Davis, Makai Mason getting up close to 10 points a game. It's like they're finding their scorers, they're figuring out how to score, and they can build on this for the future. The one person that's been a little disappointing to me is still Great Osipor. I think I expected more from him on the offensive distribution side of the ball. Granted, that Penn State game, he had 10 assists, but
out of nowhere.
I
that
know.
was crazy.
But that's that's what we could expect from him. That's the kind of stuff that he can do, and he just isn't consistent enough to do that night to night. But still, good things can happen for this team.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I think the one really important thing to note is Kepning really helps Great's game, and I think that's the biggest reason you've seen their improvement. Like, you look at Frankie, and he's a 5 points, 4 rebounds guy. It's like, oh, why is this important? And it's worth noting that, Kepning is 6'11", and Great's 6'8". Like, he's not who you really want at center. He's too undersized for that. So being able to move Frankie to the center and let Great work at a more natural 4 spot, I think has really made life easier for him. Since Frankie's come back, he's averaging 2 more points, another half an assist, and is shooting almost 10% better from the field. So it's making a big difference having Frankie out there for Great. Yeah, there is no doubt that he's been a little disappointing. We had sky high expectations for this guy. He is averaging, 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 3.5 assists on the season, which is, an excellent college basketball stat line. We just thought that he was potentially like NBA special, and it appears that no, he's a really good college player, but certainly not good enough to carry a program.
Yeah, he's kind of I'm gonna make this comparison, but he's kind of the Drew Timme of the Nikola Jokic's. It's like he's kind of a quad A guy where he just he's got the skills, but he's a guy that's really gonna have to work just in terms of size and speed and all that kind of stuff if he really wants to make the league, I think. Coming into the season, I was like, yeah, this guy could be an 18, 10, and 6 guy, and it just hasn't happened. He's just been a little slower than I think we thought. And that's a big increase. It's coming from Utah State in the Mountain West to the Big Ten, where it's just tougher games. So I'm not going to be upset at Great for underperforming when we had such high expectations, but it has been kind of our expectational low point, which is something that happens. Next game is tonight, like I said, against Rutgers. That's going to be a fun one. Then they've got Iowa again, and then they've got against number 11 Wisconsin, Indiana, USC, and then Oregon to finish out the season. So a nice fun stretch
to finish.
It's kind of a fun stretch where they could get a few wins there. Iowa, like I said, is sitting squarely in that 14 spot in the Big Ten, so they can make a climb there and maybe end up top 14.
Let's go, boys. Journey of 1,000 miles. No, that's great. It'd be nice if they can continue to beat up on the bottom tier, then ending the season with some higher level competition. Just get one quality win would be a fun way to go.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the main event, and that is the Gonzaga Bulldogs. I believe we last talked before the St. Mary's game. That was just one more in what has been a series of disappointing losses against high-quality competition. They lost 62-58 in that game. Offensively, Gonzaga was a mess. Graham Ike really came into play in the first half, but they were just kind of forcing the ball to him. He wasn't very efficient, and it cost us down the stretch. And the offense just wasn't there. It was a very disappointing loss. Definitely the nadir of the season where it was like, okay, what now? Now it's conference championship or bust if we're talking about making the tournament. Since then, things have turned around. They've scored at least 73 points in their last 4 games, winning all 4 against, Pacific and Pepperdine, which is not impressive, but, beating Loyola handily and San Francisco handily. Those are upper and middle class WCC teams, and nice to get 4 in a row. And they're kind of just digging their way back into it. It helps that college basketball is just a mess this year. Kansas has 8 losses, so a team like Gonzaga, hanging around, I wouldn't be surprised, assuming a good stretch if they can creep back into the top 25. They're obviously going to have to beat Washington State, and then February 22nd, the rematch against St. Mary's. That is a must win if they want back into the top 25. They can still lose that and I guess try to win the conference tournament to make it in. But if they want, a clear bid based on AP ranking, they have to get that St. Mary's game. So it's been an encouraging 4. I can't believe they're dragging me back into it, but things look good. It's been remarkably balanced, their offensive attack. It's been Nemhard, Huff, Ajayi, Ike, Calif Battle has been awesome. He's had some quiet moments, but he's also had some huge games for us. It's just been really balanced. And I think the biggest change that I've seen is Michael Ajayi really starting to show up, particularly on the boards, but his offensive game's coming around. He's been like an 8-8 guy over the last 4 games, and that's exciting.
Yeah, the more I've thought about this team, the more I really think the Nemhard Ike system does not benefit, and we've talked about this before, but it doesn't benefit Calif Battle or Michael Ajayi in any way. Those guys are run and gun guys. They want to get on the fast break and do those things that Gonzaga used to do a lot. And Nemhard over the last couple of seasons with Ike has really slowed things down. You would think that would bode well for them against St. Mary's, but it just hasn't. And I don't know if it's St. Mary's has figured them out, because I think, has Gonzaga won a game against St. Mary's over the last couple of years? Did they win one last year?
What are you talking about? Absolutely.
Did they win the tournament last year? I really can't remember.
I can't remember if they won the tournament, but we beat St. Mary's all the time. St. Mary's has a good season if they split with us. If they win both this season, that will be the first time they've won both in a row in a very long time. Here, I'm going backwards. It won't show in 2024, 2025, but no, we beat St. Mary's all the time. Yeah.
I think this is what we're getting at, though, is St. Mary's has been very happy to split with you on the season. And right now, they feel like they're in control of the WCC. If they feel like they can beat the Bulldogs again here on the 22nd and really feel confident, and they should. Yeah, they are absolutely the best team in the WCC right now. I think Gonzaga is more talented, but I'm not going to argue that St. Mary's hasn't been playing better, and that when we play again, I don't think Gonzaga will be favored to win that game. I think it'll be tight. But no, St. Mary's is a great program this year, and they're top 25, and they deserve to be there. So, if there was going to be a year where they took both, this year makes sense. I'm just optimistic that we can avoid that catastrophe. Because, losing twice to them, and then, God forbid, if it happens again in the tournament and we get swept, that will be a big deal, because that has not happened in many, many years. Yeah. Gonzaga currently sitting, I think last time I looked at the Jay Billis's bracketology stuff, they were sitting at kind of that 8 to 9 spot. I wouldn't expect them to drop a ton, even if they do lose to St. Mary's, just because St. Mary's is, I think, a top 5 seed. But it's very, very tough for them to make up ground, and I think that's kind of where they're going to end the season. They might jump up to a 6th spot if they can beat St. Mary's and then win the conference tournament, but it's kind of within that 6 to 9 range is where you should be expecting Gonzaga to be. And we'll see what they can do. That's definitely a tougher spot than they've been in over the last decade. So intriguing to see where Gonzaga will end up here towards the end of the season.
Yeah, it's tight, but that game is going to loom large. I believe in this team and their ability to go win the WCC tournament, but I would hate for that to be the only way they make the tournament.
I just want to say,
just have to wait and see.
I think a month ago when we were talking about this, I was like, maybe the Zags don't make the tournament. I still think that they will. There's not as much doubt, but there was a question there for a little bit.
Correct. No, and that's 100% fair. But yeah, it's also worth noting, and I think you hit the nail on the head, that one of the Zags, kind of Achilles' heels is their over-reliance on the Ryan Nemhard, Graham Ike, pick and roll offense. Other than an 18-point outing against San Francisco, where, Ike was awesome, 18 and 13, very efficient, his role these last 5 is really backed up since that St. Mary's game. It's been other guys. It's been Calif Battle. It's been a lot more Braden Huff. And I think, I'm not sure if it was Few finally pressing some buttons or if it's just the team kind of figuring out. Because that St. Mary's game was just a classic. It was just Nemhard Ike all game. And it was working to a degree, but the offense was overall horrible. And I think that might have been a wake-up call of we can't just do this. We have to get these other guys involved. And since then, that seems to be a change that is made. So, like I said, I'm not all the way back in. I want to watch that St. Mary's game, and I want to beat them by 30. But I do think there have been positive signs of growth with this team. And talent-wise, we know this team can hang with anybody. So for me, it's all about getting there and continuing to grow.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Oh, yeah, this St. Mary's game this Saturday is going to be interesting. My parents are coming to town, so I'm sure we'll throw that on the TV and be watching that one.
Got to.
All right, that's kind of it. We made it to 30 whole minutes. Anything else to say, buddy?
Shortest podcast ever. Let's get out of here. I guess real quick, the Kraken are 2-3 in their last 5. Womp womp.
Still sitting in that like 20 to 27 range of quality of hockey team. So
yeah, they're 7th out of 8 in the Pacific. So.
And they're on their like all-star break or whatever it is right now, right? Because of the what's it called? What do they call the tournament in hockey? I'm forgetting. Where it's like Sweden, Finland, Canada, US. They're playing their tournament right now. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, but very good call. They are on break for that. They haven't played since the 8th, and they won't play for another 3 days. So, a good big stretch there. Yeah, I can't remember what the tournament's called either, but USA's been doing pretty good. So watch that if you want to be more patriotic than I am.
All right. Well, for John Carey, I'm Tyler Cartwright. This has been the Sound Up Seattle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of Sound Up Seattle, please feel free to like, follow, subscribe, do all that good stuff. We're on YouTube at Sound Up Seattle. We are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, everywhere you can find podcasts at Sound Up Seattle as well. You can find Sound Up Seattle on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, all at Sound Up Seattle, all lowercase, all one word. You can email us your questions, comments, concerns about why we don't know what the name of the hockey tournament is at soundupseattle@gmail.com. You can find me, Tyler, at TyCart50, everywhere that's important, and you can find John.
Watching White Lotus, baby. It's back on.
Season 3
I'm
come
excited. Episode 1's out. Episode 1's out.
Shoot. I'm in the midst of Severance right now. Severance has been big.
Wrap up. This is more important. It's in Thailand. I'm very excited. It's nice to have a weekly show on again, so let's go.
Yep. All right. Well, with all that being said, I'm going to say go Dogs and fully encompass UW and Gonzaga with that one.
Fuck the Huskies. Go Zags.